is, let's say I put a breakpoint here, then the program will run from number 1 till this place, till number 11 and stop. So this is like a stop, which is, okay, now we'll stop here, then we will step through each line of code to understand what it's doing. And this predictive stepping is, the process is stop, predict what the line of code will do, and then run the line of code and see if it matches with what your prediction is. In this way, you're able to, first of all, understand what that line of code is doing before even running the line of code. So in this way, you make sure that you actually know what a code is doing, which will help in the future for me to be able to point out errors when I have like lots of lines of code. So this is a practice both for me and for anyone who is interested in understanding how codes, understanding code when you say it. So let's get into this process of predictive stepping. So right now, why this ran? Because I didn't initially put a breakpoint. So we'll have to stop. This is stop, and then redo the whole thing again. Right now, the breakpoint is here. So when I click on this to run and debug it, so right now, nothing has happened because I'm at this line. So I will have to predict what will happen. So first of all, looking at this left place, we have, this is where the variables in the code will be displayed. Then this is where I will word a call stack. The call stack will help me to see what has happened at every point. And then this shows the breakpoint. The breakpoint I have currently is in line 12 of the file. So this is the module I'm working on. Module meaning the file I am working on. So let's get into this process of predictive stepping. So I am predicting that when I run this line of code, that there will be a variable called A will be created, and the number 1 will be assigned to it. So what I'll be doing here is to put a comment on what my prediction is, and to actually ensure that when I run it and the prediction happens the way I expected, then I know that I truly understand what that line of code is doing. So here is, I'm predicting that a variable C. This is something to use when working on predictive stepping. So this is to step into this line and see what it's doing. Yes. Okay, the variable A has been created and the value of 1 assigned to it. So I thoroughly understand what this line of code is doing. So for this part, a variable B will be created and the value of 2. Now, 2 here is a string. So this variable is going to be a string. So the variable will be 2 will be as a string 2 will be assigned to the variable. So let's see, we can copy this and adjust it. That a variable B will be created and the string 2 assigned to it. So let's step into the line and see what happens. So a variable B has been created and the value of, and the string 2 assigned to it. So now for this line, this line here says add A plus B and assign it to a variable C. So my prediction here is that there will be an error because variable A is a number, variable B is a string. So a number cannot be added to a string. So I'm predicting that this will throw up an error. Because you cannot add integer to a string. Or let's put it this way, you cannot add integer and the string. So it's impossible to add an integer with a string. So let's step into the line and see what happens. Oh, the error has occurred. So this error has occurred and is showing that, see what it says here, unsupported operand type plus. So you cannot sum or, you cannot sum an integer and a string. So this shows me that I thoroughly understand what just these few lines of code is doing, which is create a variable A, create another variable B, try to sum them up. Now, if I were building a program or if I were actually doing something working and I step in through my code line by line this way, and I'm able to find out, oh, this is where I'm having an error, then I can go back in and change, if I actually aiming to do a sum, then I can come back here and change this to become an integer, so that I can be able to sum the two values. So this is the first step of my practice in the predictive stepping. So this is just a very simple line of code. Moving on to further examples to see, to keep practicing with bigger and bigger lines of code. So we stop this. So of course, we ran into an error. Our debugging had stopped. So moving on to the next file. So let's close this up. Okay, see. So we're working on a second, let me clear this up. So we're working on a second file, and let me put a breakpoint here. So we see, I've worked on, close this up. Okay, now I've put a breakpoint on line 10. We want to step through and see what this program is doing. Actually, this is going to help us to practice something on how to stop a program that is, running continuously. Now we'll see an example. This is a while loop, and it's saying while true, print this. Then nothing else, like there's nothing else in the code. This looks interesting. We're going to see what it's doing. But at that point, but before we get into that, we want to do it with debugging, like the predictive stepping, whereby we predict what is going to happen next and what will happen next and what will happen next. So we'll run it in a debug mode. What's happened? Okay, run and debug. So yes, it has been established. We see I'm on this line, of which I will have to press here to step into the line. When I step into the distance, it will then tell me what this line of code will do. Now, my prediction is that okay, I predict that nothing will happen here, right? Like when this particular line, nothing will happen because let's say the function is true. I mean, a function is established, so nothing surprise, no value or variable is going to be created. So nothing will happen here apart from establishing the truth of the statement. So I do this. So nothing happened anywhere, no change. And then my program didn't stop too as well because let's see, what's this? Okay, we'll see. Nothing right now as I clicked on it, nothing happened because it's not a variable or anything. But let's see what happens on this line. So when I click on it, it prints these 3 dots. Okay. Well, then when it prints the 3 dots and goes back up. Do we see that when this is printed, then the loop, it goes back up because this is a loop. So it's saying that while we are still in the program, while this is true, while this function is existing, print this. Now, at every point, and because there is no closing statement, whenever this prints, it will go back. This, if I step through it again, it comes back here. I step through, it prints this. So this is like a continuous loop that will just keep printing this. So the prediction here, I forgot to write that. Prediction will print 3 dots and go back to the loop. So this is actually what is going on here. As I step through, it will print and go back, print this thing and go back because there is nothing else. Now, if this was a program I was writing and I forgot to close it out somewhere, I will have these 3 dots. It will keep printing 3 dots, printing 3 dots, printing 3 dots until perhaps I run out of memory or something terrible happens to my computer. But this is one way of finding out what is going on with your code. You know, when you run the debug mode, to be able to understand exactly where your problem is coming from. So this is interesting. And this predictive stepping is helping to internalize what each line of code is doing. So we have established this one, that this 3 dots will continue to print and loop and continue to print. Now, if I want it to stop, assuming I ran this, I'm not running it in a debug mode, it will just keep printing this, printing. And if I want to stop it, I just have to press Ctrl+C on the terminal. But since I'm here, I can just stop the debugging from this place and it ends. So moving on to the next file to continue practicing. Okay, this is a way to remove the breakpoints. You add breakpoints, you click on it again, you remove the breakpoints. So moving on to the next file to see what we have there. So this is this is a longer file. So we'll step through each line of the code to see if we understand what is happening. So this is one way of practicing variables. Let's see. So you will know you have understood the file when you can predict what each line will execute next and how it will change program states. You can step forward in the debugger, can correct your understanding when you make a mistake. So we say, okay, I will place the breakpoint. Let me place the breakpoint here so that we can start predicting from here. So I predict here, prediction is that a variable named prediction so a variable name will be created and the value D added. I had to stop for a while to attend to something and forgotten where I stopped. So what kind of name is this? Yeah, Daniel. Well, if you see me typing like a snail, well, my hands are full, so I'm actually doing this with just one hand. So yeah, doing as much I can. A variable name will be created and the value, the Daniel attached, assigned to it. So of course, everything that happens in computer is something being created in memory, right? So when we talk about this variable created, it's creating in the it's being created in memory. So and when it's created, it's like a box, for example, and then this is assigned to it, is a name put inside the variable, so that whenever you call this variable, you're referring to this. So now you can assign a new value to a variable. Okay, yeah, let's, of course, we're doing our run and debug, and I have predicted that this is what will happen at this line. So let's see what happens, what will happen actually. So let's step. So the variable name has been created and these values are attached to it, assigned to it. So what will happen on this line? So the prediction here, of course, is that on this line, the value of name will change to this. So instead of being this Daniel, it will now become Mittens. So the value of name will change. The prediction here. Variable name will change to Mittens. So let's see if that will be true. Okay, yes, the prediction is true. Name has been changed to Mittens. So what will happen on this line? Now, this is another variable called hand thing. Now, this variable is given this variable will be assigned what the value we have in name. That is the prediction here. You know that in previous lines, we established that name, the value of name is meetings, right? So when we create this second variable, it will become a second variable called hand thing. And then the hand thing, the value will be meetings too, because what we currently have as name now is meetings. So let's jot down our prediction to see if we'll be correct or not. These comments are important because, of course, the practice here is to learn how to understand lines of code. So it's important to write down what you're thinking will happen, so that if any surprise comes up, you'll be able to compare the surprise with what you had already predicted to help you see what your line of thinking is. So this place, the prediction is a variable hunting. A new variable will be created and it will be assigned the value meetings. So, and these meetings is being assigned meetings because that is the value we have at name. So the value of name will be assigned to this new variable. So let's step in and see. So yes, a new variable called handling has been created. So we actually are having a good understanding of what each line of code here is doing. So nothing is surprising to us at this point. So we see, what will this line of code do? So hunting currently has a value called meetings, but then we want to give it a new value called glove. So this is all. What will happen here is that the new value will be assigned to hunting. A new value will be assigned to hunting. A new value glove. So we will run it and see. We will step into and see. So yes, the value of hunting. Let's open this a little bit to make sure. So hunting has taken on the value glove. So the value have changed from meetings to glove. Now, name Polia. What will happen on this line? Currently, we have something in the variable. Variable name currently has a value called meetings. Now, on this line, the value of name, the variable name will change to Polia. So in this case, we are predicting that name will be assigned a new value. a new value called volume. Okay, we step in and see. Right. So name now has a new value. So just a little bit to recap, we can see that what is happening in the memory is that things are being replaced, changed, taken away, a new one, like new value added, and it's just changing. Once we create a variable, we can assign anything to it. We can change the value at any point. We can equally assign the value of the variable to something else by just even saying, just like the way we did the hand thing is equal to name. So this is just what is going on in memory. Things are being changed around. The values of the variables are being changed. So okay. Let's see. I think. Okay, I think I changed up something here because what we want to look at here is using a variable without first assigning a value to it will throw an error. So let's see, let's remove this and see what happens. So now that I've removed it, what's going to happen here? Because this is just an empty space, right? So if you create a variable without assigning something into it, it's going to be an error, because then why did you create it, right? So let's predict what will happen here. Predict that an error will occur, because an error will occur because the value is empty, because empty. So let's see what happens here. Oh, I didn't save this when okay, the problem here is that I had a value there initially, and I removed it without saving the file. So it's almost as good as I did nothing, right? So how do we, let's try to fix this. Okay, let's try to fix it by, because see, when you touch this, it still gives you what was there, because I didn't save the file. So we add this one back to be so now this is a way for me to actually practice something I don't know before. I want to see how I can get back to this initial point. So let me do some trial and error here to see what is on. Oh, step me out of it entirely. Okay. So that didn't work out well. So what can I do next? What I can do next is, just since I don't want to run this every other stuff that I had already done, let me start from here, okay? And I've placed my breakpoint here. Then I can run from here down to see what will happen. Remember, what we are trying to predict here is predict that an error will occur because of the value, because the value is empty. That's, we created a variable without assigning anything to it. We want to see what will happen. So I will delete this because this is not what. I will delete this. I'll just comment it out because this is not what we are trying to. This is just exactly like the other ones that we have worked on initially. So this is our main focus, to find out what will happen when the value of the variable is just empty. When you created a variable without assigning anything to it. So I run this. Okay, of course, this is where we want to start from. Now, don't be surprised that these things are here, because this, remember initially we said that when you have a breakpoint, what that means is that every other thing in the program will run. Every other thing in the program will run till you get and then stop at this line, right? Waiting for you to then step through, because you're trying to understand what that line is doing, right? So it does, every other thing is assumed that you know what every other thing here is doing. We have worked on them down to this point. So now we just want to step through, and then get to where we're actually looking at. So the next line that will execute will be this. And of course, we have done a prediction that name will be assigned a new value called polio. So we currently name has meetings as value. So when we step, we have the value of name has changed. So now let's see, this is the next line that we're going to run. Now, our prediction here is that because this is empty, and by empty, we mean that we created a variable without putting anything inside it. And remember, all these things are working in memory, right? By memory, let's say you just create a space in a memory. And of course, when you create a space, the next thing is that, when you create a box, let's use a box. The next thing we are expecting is that you put something inside it, like a value. But if you don't, then let's see what will happen, which is what we are predicting here. Our prediction is that there will be an error. Okay, so we step into, oh, not an error, that's a surprise, right? Okay, we have a surprise because actually something was created. We predicted that there would be an error because nothing is assigned to the value. But now we are seeing that actually the value was created, the variable was created, and it was assigned an empty string. So obviously, this empty string is something. Now, this is why this is important, right? This predictive stepping. Because in my mind, I'm thinking that there will be an error because I'm believing that this is empty. But this is showing us that, hey, no, that there is no error because something was actually that you placed something here. So what then will give us an error? Assuming we want to try out, creating a variable without putting something inside. Let's try something else. Let's try having this. Let's try. Okay, let's come down here and do this instead. Say, hey, is equal to nothing, right? Because we have seen that when you put this is assumed to be something, correct? It's assumed to be something, which is an empty string, but then it's still something. So let's see what will happen here. The prediction here is that this is where we will then have prediction. prediction here is there will be an error. Goodness, typing with one hand is the worst thing ever. There will, okay, will be an error. So let's see, because I mean, we just created a variable, hey, and we just didn't put anything into it. Okay, okay, yeah. Now we know that the initial hey we had this, right, which is an empty string. But then this current hey just doesn't have like nothing. So we want to see what happens, right? So, but first of all, let's remember that this is the next line that will execute now. So it's going to print end of script. But anyway, let's change this up to just checking out, hey, we don't have to print end of script because we are not yet at the end. We thought we were going to get to the end. Checking out empty hey. That's interesting. Empty hey. Okay. There will be an error. This is what we are. Okay. Python is already telling us something, right? Saying expected expression to the right of equal sign, but whatever we're practicing something. So when we step here, what will we get? Okay, oh Lord, it printed end of script and stopped. I still didn't save the file again, but then even if I had saved the file, what would happen? Does it mean that print is the end? Oh. That's another interesting something to look at. Does it mean that that once your debugging gets to a print statement, it stops? That's weird. But well, this is a learning session, so we just keep learning things that are going on. But I want to leave this and run. Okay, now let me put my breakpoint this time around. Let me put my breakpoint here. So far, we have worked on everything and we've come to this point. So let's run this debug session again and see. This is fun. This is fun. So what is going on? Listen. Okay. We are in our, oh, Python is not even allowing me to, like it's not even allowing me to run this because there is an error in the file already. So let's try one more time and see. I want to see something. So is continuously stopping because see what it's saying here. Hey, prediction, there will be an error. Invalid syntax. Well, we expected an error, right? So it's saying there will be an error. So let me just assign something to this variable and let's run it and see. Okay, we'll step through. But then again, I want to see what will happen at this print statement. Let's see. What? Because something funny happened when it printed end of script the last time and then stopped. We were trying to see what would happen at this hey. So let's see what will happen here. I'm predicting that it will print and then move on to the next line. Prediction. It will print and move on to the next line. What I'm trying to find out is, does it mean that a print is the end of your debug session or what? It will print and move to the next line. So, okay, so far this is where our debug this thing is. So step. We have gone through all this in the past. So now this is the next one where we predicted it will print checking out empty hay and then move on to this. Let's see. Okay. So of course it printed checking out empty hay and then moved on to the next line. So our prediction is correct. Print is not the end of the debug session. So we have hay. And of course, previously, when I had an empty stuff there, the file could not even run because there was an error. So well, let me see if I can even just remove this at this point and see what will happen when we run it. Because we are trying to check out. Okay, but let me see. Okay, let's see what will happen. Checking out an empty hay. And then we run. What do we get? You got nothing. You got nothing. But well, the error we are seeing here is expected expression to the right of equal sign. So this should go away. Let's see. So our program just stopped. And I think if we want to clearly see the error, we just have to run it now in a debug mode and see. So yeah, invalid syntax, we are seeing the error here. So what this particular file has taught me, it has taught me some things, and this is it. First of all, I actually thought there would be an error here because this is an empty string, but then it happened that there was no error because an empty string is considered a value, right? So I think we have to just adjust here that our prediction was wrong. Prediction was wrong. Empty string is considered a value. Empty string is considered a value. So that was something I picked up from this. So which also shows that now as you're building something, and let's say you're building something and you just automatically put this here in your mind thinking that okay, I'm assigning an empty stuff, that nothing will happen, there will be an error at that point without you knowing that actually it's not true. So this is a good stuff to know. And then for this, a syntax error, the Python will not even allow me to run the file, and it just shows you the error. Now, I think this is also a place where I have to differentiate between bugs and errors. Now, this one that I had initially thought it is empty, which ended up not being empty because the variable was created. This is a bug because I mean, it ran, it executed, but it didn't give me what I expected. So it did an entirely different stuff altogether. So we consider it a bug, which you now have to come in and fix in the program. But this error And Python will just tell you, to catch you right from the beginning, telling you, hey, you're making a Python, you're making an error here, a syntax error, like this one is saying invalid syntax. So you have to assign something to your variable. So yeah, this is quite a very nice learning experience. Okay. We'll be working on another file. This one has, as we are going, we are progressing from few lines of code to more lines of code to more lines of code. Let's recap on why we're even doing this is because we want to understand what each line of code is doing when we see codes. The reason for this this process is called predictive stepping, because it helps you to internalize what a code is doing. It helps you to thoroughly understand what your code is doing. And also it helps in the process of debugging, which is when you're encountering error in your program, you can be able to go in, run each line step by step to find out where there are errors or bugs that are like making your program do what you don't want it to do. So the first step, of course, is to put a breakpoint from the very first line of your or program, or from wherever it is you want to start your debugging from. Because of course, if you have like thousands of lines of code, you may not want to start from the very beginning to run through everything. So you just go into the functions or the lines that are confusing, put a breakpoint, and just start stepping from there to understand what is happening. So, but for this practice sake, we're actually starting from the very beginning. So we put our breakpoint here. I'm going to close up. I'm working on this data type file now, so I'm going to close up this. So we can see this tells you where your breakpoint is. Currently is on line 15. So this is VS Code, and this is where you do your run and debug. This is the run and debug button. So clicking on it will bring out, we start. Let me put let me just clear this up a little bit. Let me work. Okay. So of course, this is variables, watch, call stack, breakpoint, as we have talked about earlier. All these help you to, you see where your variables appear, you see what is going on, like what you're working on and all that. But of course, the major thing is, like we said, predictive stepping. What will happen on this line when I run this code? That is just what we are doing at the moment. We want to understand what is happening at each line of code. So for this, my prediction here is I'm predicting that a variable called a string will be created, and this sentence, this text is what will be assigned to that variable. So we'll see variable a string will be created, and a text and the text, let's call it the text, and the text in the value assigned to it. So when we say text, when I say value, talking about like this is the value that we want to be assigned to this variable. So that is my prediction. I want to always state it here so that I remember what exactly I'm doing, which is I'm predicting each line of code. Okay, what did I, okay, a variable, a string. I think it's best to just put this into quotes so that I exactly know what I'm writing here. Okay, will be created and the text and the value assigned to it. So let's see, let's step through this place and see what happens. So we step, the variable has been created and the statement or the text assigned to it. So in this place, what is going to happen here? Now, this same variable is going to be assigned an empty string. Now we'll see that an empty string is still a string. In the last file we worked on, it was a surprise. But right now we're no longer surprised because we know that actually, because in the last file we thought there would be an error when we wrote that hey should be, assigned empty string. But then we found out that empty string is still something, right? It's still a value. So it's an empty string, is a value. So our prediction here, of course, is not that there will be an error anymore. Our prediction is that this a string will just simply be replaced with an empty string. Currently, the a string has a text inside, but at this line, when we run this line, the text will be replaced with an empty string. So the prediction, so this is how you build upon knowledge that you learned previously and just keep going. So the prediction is that variable a string will be replaced with an empty string. Variable a string will be replaced with an empty string. So variable a string will be replaced with an empty string. We run it and we see that that is true. Here we have our variable a string has been replaced with an empty string. So this is the next line that will execute, which is an integer is equal to 1. So now this will be created. A variable called an integer will be created and value 1 assigned to it. So I think at this point we have gotten what is going on, that when you see a variable, an integer, variable integer, an integer will be created the value on assigned to it. So when we step, this is exactly what has happened. Now, what will happen at this line? 1 will be replaced with 0. That is, the variable will now take, this is the next line that will execute. And of course, the prediction is that an integer will be reassigned a value of 0. So I think we can just even copy what we have here so that we move faster a little bit. Will be created, and no, this will not be created. Variable and integer will be assigned 0. Okay. So let's run it and see. So yes, and remember, it wasn't recreated because we already have the variable in existence. The value initially was 1. So now the value has now taken on 0 as a current value. Now for this place, it will take on minus 12. That is our prediction, because we are simply just changing out what the value is. And if you can think about this like a box, like all these variables are like boxes. You put something inside, you remove it, put another thing, remove it, change it, change it. You can change it from being a text to being an integer or whatever thing you want. So, but it's all about just remove, and remember that the variable is all about just removing something, adding something, and just changing things up. So here our prediction is that this variable will not be assigned minus 2. So when we run this, so this particular line, yes, this is now minus 12. So let's see what next. In this line, a float is what? 1. So remember, currently we just have only 2 variables here, a string and integer, right? We don't have any variable called a float. So this is going to be created and then it will be assigned this value. That is our prediction. So I think let's just copy this, then change things up a bit. So when we place our prediction, this a float will be created and the value 1.0 assigned to it. So we step and see. So this has happened. We've already created it and it has taken on this value. Now, since it's already in existence, we now want to change out the value. So our prediction here is almost similar to what is going on here. So now that, we are copying and pasting because we have gotten an understanding of what is really happening here, which is what we create a variable, we assign a value to it, we change out the value for something else and just keep changing up things like that. So this variable, a float, will be assigned 0.1. Okay. Assigned 0.1. So we step and see it has happened. Our float is now 0.1. So in this place, our prediction is that it will be minus 1.2. So minus 1.2. We're gonna, let's see. Correct. So our float is now minus 1.2. Now let's check out for what happens with true and false variables. Variables like true and false, we need to work out the same way. Currently, we just have 3 variables in our memory. These a float, a string, and integer. We don't have Boolean. So what is going to happen at this line? Our prediction, of course, is that the variable will be created and then it will take on the value true. Let's see. Let's copy this and use it so that we don't waste so much time. So variable a boolean will be created and the value true assigned to it. Okay, let's step and see. Correct. So now we have 4 variables and our boolean has the value true. Also, the same thing will happen here. Since our boolean is already created, we're now looking at the value will be reassigned to something else. So in this case, it will now, instead of being true, it will now become false. So let's see, that's our prediction there. So we just, okay. Oh no. Let's take the, this, a boolean, will be assigned false. Okay, we step and see. So our boolean has taken the value of false. So far, we have understood what has happened in these lines of code down to this place. So we have a strong understanding now of what is actually going on in memory when we create a variable and assign something to it. So let's see. So what is going to happen on this line of code? So this is a variable will be created, and we want to, in this variable, we want it to return something. No, not return something, but we want it to actually tell us if a string is a string. So what is this value? What is this going to return? So the prediction, my prediction here is that initially the variable we created, a string, is a string, right? We assigned a string to it, and currently is also a string, but it's an empty string, but still a string. So the prediction here is that a variable called pass check string will be created in memory, will be created the okay, and it will be assigned true. Now, why am I saying this? I'm saying this because this function called isInstance is a function in Python. What it does is that it helps you to compare if what you have in this place is of the type this. And when we say type, we know in Python we have different types. We have integers, we have strings, we have booleans. So this thing is trying to check the instance of this a string. That's whatever variable, what the value you have in the variable called a string. Is it a string or not? Of which, if it is a string, then this will take on, this will become true. And if it is not a string, this will become false. So my prediction is that this variable will be created because currently we don't have any variable called pass check string. So it's going to be created, and then this function will help us check if a string is a string. And if it is, then it will assign true to this variable. That is my prediction. So let's see what will happen at this line of code based on our prediction. So step correct. So you see a variable called pass check string has been created, and it takes on the value true. Again, based on our prediction, we said this will happen because initially we created a variable called a string, and we assigned something to that variable. We assigned a value to that variable, and that value is a string. So we want to use this function to check if actually this a string is of the type string, and based on whatever that is returned, this variable will be created, and it will be, and true or false will be assigned to it. So currently we have the variable created and it's true. So why is this here? Oh, why did we do that? Anyway, I mean, why I'm saying why did you do that? This line of code, for whatever reason, I don't know, executed. But actually, it's just this one we wanted. So anyway, we are looking at pass check integer. So we want to check what we have in the value, in the variable called an integer. Is it an integer or not? Is it an integer or not? Is it an integer or not? So our prediction is that So our prediction, just like this one, is that this video is just not okay. It's, oh. So I want to do this, but I don't want to have this anymore because it just doesn't look okay. A variable called this pass check integer will be created and it will be assigned true. And I'm saying true because currently what we have in the variable integer is an integer. So my prediction is that it will be true. And this will be created and it will be true. So we step and see. Of course, pass check integer has been created and is true. So for this one, pass check float is still the same thing. So when we step, pass check a boolean is boolean, and this one pass check okay, yeah. So we also put this here, and our prediction is that pass check boolean will be true. So when we step, it's true. Okay, I think something kind of happened to this program. I was expecting this line to run, but then it didn't. And I don't know. Okay. I think let's pause it here a little bit. Will be created, and I want to stop this and start like briefly again around here so that I will step through small, like little by little to actually know why this line skipped. Maybe I messed up somewhere. So, but let's see. Right now I'm going to save this file and I'm going to stop and so I want to put the breakpoint here on this place. Then let's run and debug and see what was happening. Okay, so far these variables are not here because we stopped at this place, right? But of course we have stepped through them before and we have explained what is happening here and we have written down some predictions. So we're just going to step and see what is going on. So now pass check string has been created just as we predicted. So now in this prediction, we want to see if pass check integer will be created. And our prediction is that it will be true. So we step So pass check string has been created. So sorry, so pass check integer has been created and it's true. So our next prediction is that pass check float will be created and that it will be true because a float, which is what we have here, is a float, is of the type float. So we step and we see it has been created. Pass check float is true. So our next prediction is that pass check boolean as bool will be created and it will be true because our boolean is a boolean here. So we step and we see it has been created and assigned a value true. So our next prediction, I think this is where we stop. We have not added any prediction here. Our prediction here is that this will be created, pass check boolean as integer will be created, and we want to see if this is going to be true or not. Let's see. A boolean, we have a boolean, and the distance is false. Yeah, but it's a boolean. Booleans are either true or false. And we want to see if it's an integer. What is the prediction here? Well, the prediction is that it's true. We're going to get true, and this is the reason why. Booleans can be integers. Now, when we think about this mathematically, true is 1, false is 0. Let's also remember that computers understand ones and zeros, not necessarily true, false, or all these like things that we write. Things in computers are being represented as ones and zeros, and true means 1, 0 is false. So it makes sense for a boolean to be an integer. Okay, so let's predict. Our prediction here is that this variable will be created. Let me copy this so that we can edit it. So, this is very long, but our prediction is that a variable called pass check boolean as ints, will be created and it will be assigned true, because we are believing that for true is 1, false is 0. So let's see what will happen here. And this line. Correct. The variable has been created and it's assigned the value true. That's pass check boolean as ints has been created. So far we have covered about how many lines of code now. So we want to see what happens here. Now we are expecting, let's see what, in fact, let's not predict that, but let's just keep taking each line step by step. So what is going to happen here? Fail check string, a string, boolean. Well, our prediction here is that this will be false because booleans are, of course, true or false. They are kind of logic, something like that, but strings are strings like text. So what we have currently in our variable called a string is a string and not boolean. So our prediction here is that we are going to, a variable called fail check string will be created and that it will be assigned a value false. Fail check string will be created and it will be assigned false. So this is our prediction. So we will step through and see. So fail check string is assigned false. So this is correct. So we have, for this one, this will be created an integer. What we currently have an integer is a number, right? So, and integers are not floats. Floats are things like, points, decimal numbers. but this is an integer, whole numbers. So saying that an integer is a float is a false statement. So we'll be asking our program, is this true or false? And our prediction is that this variable will be created and it will return false because an integer is not float. So we put our prediction. Let's still paste what we have. Fail check. What is that variable? Fail check integer. Okay. Integer. Will be created and it will be assigned false. So let's see. Correct. Fail check integer is assigned false. So the same goes here. Fail check float. A float is not an integer. So we are expecting a false this thing here. So we copy this. Because our predictions are similar. Fail check what float. To be assigned false. So we run this line to see what it gives us. We get false. So the next line is saying that a Boolean is a string. No, our prediction is that it's going to be false because Boolean is a bool, is a Boolean, is a type Boolean, not type string in Python. So our prediction is that this variable will be created. The variable is fail check Boolean. Will be created and it will be assigned false. So let's step through and see. False, correct. So now we are at the end of the program. So let's see, we print end of script. We have